Go. Recording.
Okay. Welcome to the MicroProfile Service Mesh weekly call. Today is the 5th September. Yeah, we are discussing a few issues. Okay. I think it's at the moment the GitHub sample is quite good, so we are making good steady progress. I think it's we have a kind of equivalent open liberty and Thorntail deployment infrastructure. So I think it's to move on. I think it's kind you brought up in the previous course. We want to match the service. Want to compare between the Istio fault handling and fault tolerance handling. It's a good idea. Actually, I have some doc written, so we can in this agenda. Let me compare that. Let me put in the agenda. It's still fault handling. Okay, so the other thing is about the scope of this app, the sample app. So I mean, it's I think we also look at from the IBM cloud ICP point of view and etc. And then is how do we fit the MicroProfile in the Istio infrastructure? And it's better to demonstrate all of the MicroProfile specs and to see whether it can fit in okay. If it's okay, that's great. That's a good ecosystem. And sometimes actually, I think in this kind of exercise is quite a good we define specs, like we define REST client, we define open tracing, but there's no other, we haven't, got any other area to see how these two can interact with each other. I think this spec, this work group is ideal place to demonstrate all this technology at the same time can see the interaction as well. So what do you guys think?
I think, as I mentioned, probably not last week, but maybe 2 weeks ago, I don't think the examples we're creating for this service mesh investigation piece should use every single microprofile spec if there's no way that that spec is going to impact anything. Like, for instance, config. To me, config has some implications around use with Kubernetes for config maps and stuff, but that doesn't change with Istio in the picture. It's Kubernetes and OpenShift that have that integration. So I don't think adding something like config to the service example we have really adds anything from an Istio point of view. And we're not trying to make this a all-encompassing example of every single spec. Because if we are, then that's definitely a change, and we need to figure out the right approach, because we've already got lots of other examples that aren't being updated, and I don't want us to be in a situation where we have yet another one that falls out of whack.
The thing is that one worry I have is, okay, we I think, from a theory point of view is, okay, this is shouldn't have any impact. However, once we put in progress and sometimes we find some surprises, and I have a different thought on this config, because if you put in, although you say hasn't got any impact in Istio, however, Istio is operating on top of Kubernetes, and indirectly it has the impact. I think is a nice picture to see. Actually, we kind of complement to what I mean Kubernetes, or integrate well with Kubernetes, which also benefit Istio.
But what I mean is you're not configuring MicroProfile config settings inside Istio. So whether Istio is there or not, how MicroProfile config interacts with your app and the underlying Kubernetes doesn't change.
Yeah, my theory is Istio sit on top of Kubernetes. MicroProfile config directly interact with Kubernetes, and is kind of indirectly interact with Istio. If Istio operate on some other different stuff, but at the moment, I think Kubernetes is kind of
It doesn't indirectly work with Istio at all, because MicroProfile config is confined to the container that contains the runtime service. The Istio is in the sidecar and the proxy in a different container. The two never interact.
So if you talk about the Istio container on its own, yes. However, in the whole end-to-end, I mean, I think is my picture is kind of end-to-end. So basically, is from the app directly to the service mesh architecture.
Isn't that what the conference app is for, though? To show everything kind of working together?
So that's different. So conference app is showing things work together. However, it's not in the service mesh infrastructure.
But that doesn't mean it couldn't be in the future.
Yeah, if we I mean target that in the service mesh architecture, if there's some repurpose that one. Yeah, as long as there's somewhere to demonstrate that, I think it's better to say actually is we work well with this end-to-end scenario from the application developer to the DevOps. It's a kind of seamless. So I think it spells out well. However, I do think in this spec, I think is all kind of very cheap and easy to do. I think the main focus is fault tolerance. I think if we can spend I mean half an hour to get that done, and then I mean done and dealt with, is not a big issue, is it? I think I'm pretty keen on this. And then for other specs, we can discuss. I mean, which one we think should be I mean focused on. However, we should just discuss. Oh, okay, it shouldn't have any impact. We just say okay, there's no interaction, etc. No impact. I think it's just like a few minutes work. Just we just make sure we haven't. I mean, we haven't ignored anything. We haven't. I mean, missed anything. Okay, that's just my thought. However, yeah, we can discuss more on the fault tolerance on the comparison. So for the, I mean, to move this a little bit, so can we talk in the in the MicroProfile forum and repurpose the conference app and get that deployed to Istio and demonstrate all the specs? I think that's going to be a good thing. I think this will fix the problem. Is currently the stale is not much action or not much movement at all.
So is the purpose of this example app to prove out the ideas that are being discussed here, or is the purpose of the example app a demonstration to developers on how to develop with the MicroProfile on the Istio mesh?
This samples is not used by the developer. Basically, it's more like experiment. more like we use this example to experiment, or how can we best create this ecosystem. This might be short-lived. It's not going to replace any samples. Let's focus on the most important thing. For other things, if people want to, I mean, spend the time and like very cheap and cheap few minutes and get it done, I think is a good thing, because it's kind of, this is not going to be a demonstration sample. It's just an experiment to see things. Okay, let's look at a comparison. So Ken, do you have any other things you want to discuss for the agenda?
Nothing in particular right now.
Okay.
I know there are issues with some of the specs in the mesh, but I haven't had a chance to figure out possible solutions.
So the REST client, is that the REST client didn't propagate open tracing headers?
I know for Thorntail it works. I think there's a piece missing from the REST spec to make it happen for everything else. But I found issues with metrics and Open API that I need to figure out solutions for.
Okay. Okay, so that's good. I think this is a kind of experiment is really good. Can someone also write minutes? Once I talk, I cannot write minutes. Okay. Let me quickly get something else. Oh no.
Up to this point, have the idea of roles come in terms of, you know, the role of an administrator versus the role of a developer? Have you guys discussed that up to this point?
Rules, yeah, we haven't discussed this. I think this is a good time to discuss because let's look at the something I did some research for tolerance. So it's the the people who use for tolerance use the MP specs. They are developers. For people who are dealing with, who are operating in Istio, they are DevOps. So this is kind of two roles. So I think if the specs, if it's like a config spec, config spec and health check spec, and they work well with the Istio, and the Istio people will write the config rules, for example, and then put like a config map in the config map, specify some properties that and etc. They are DevOps job. And for the people writing code, that's developers. I think let's look at the fault tolerance. We will see everybody to do. I did some comparison here as well. Anybody who add these annotations like this, they are developers. And anybody write these Istio rules, they are DevOps. So basically, we want to join them up. How to join from the developer Spring to the DevOps Spring. So how can we map like this one? The developer says the timeout 400, and this one, how can we translate into this? Basically, is how can we make a DevOps job a lot easier? And maybe the MicroProfile fault tolerance says, oh, okay, I want to time out 400. If we can come up writing, automatically generating these config rules, or maybe a template, and the DevOps can automatically say, oh, this is a template, you want something like this. I think his job a lot easier. I think this kind of macro profile photo tolerance facilitates DevOps, yeah, the job.
I think the roles are reversed though. I think it's actually the other way around, where I've always seen the Istio control plane as a way to kind of return control back to DevOps slash operations, right? And what happens at that layer tends to override what happens in applications.
That's a really good question, John. This is just getting it started. So basically, the developer says 400. That's the developer's wild guess. So DevOps will have final say. So basically, when I say template is kind of the draft. So and DevOps can change this one to be like a 10 second. So because we the fault tolerance, all these annotations, all this configurable. So basically, this can automatically map to the configure property, and then directly influence this to be a 10 second. So basically, it's to start with, from your app, when your app deploy to Istio, you automatically generate a template with the drafted value.
No, Emily, we've discussed this before, and several of us at Red Hat are very much against the idea of automatically creating Istio config when something is deployed. I'm perfectly fine with being able to create these files in some kind of plugin that's used for developers as a get started with Istio config. But as soon as we start talking about automatically creating Istio config files on deployment, that's not something we're going to do.
It's no, it's okay. It's not when you deploy into Istio. What I'm thinking is like, oh, okay, sorry. So it's not when you basically when you do the Maven clean install, we could have some plugin automatically generate this file, and then you can tweak this file and etc. And then the DevOps can look at this file and use this file. If you choose you want to create your own, yeah, that's fine.
I would go even further and say that DevOps wouldn't use these files at all, because they're going to know configuration of Istio better than a developer. I think generating Istio config from this, or even just having a document that says, if you have this fault tolerance annotation, this is what it looks like in Istio config. That's purely for a developer to try things locally. I think if we start trying to cross into the DevOps world, then that's going to cause us a whole world of hurt. And Ops knows Ops best and developers don't. So I don't think we should be promoting this as a, here's generate a skeleton for Ops for you. I think it's purely a developers running Istio locally to have some config for Istio kind of thing.
But if we do not make this connection, and this is kind of all disconnected. So developer write something and the DevOps hasn't get any clue. I mean, how to utilize how to utilize what a developer has, and there's no
So
connection.
why would they need to utilize what a developer's done?
So for example, here,
from an ops perspective, in a live environment, what these settings for timeouts or retries or anything like that could change from moment to moment. So it's very difficult for a developer to say this is what the timeout should be, and for ops to go, yeah, sure, we'll keep that all the time.
No. I wasn't saying that. So what I said previously, so developer indicator or this one has a timeout. So DevOps can go ahead to change it to any value, because this is all configurable, and it will directly influence what the app will do. If you configure to 10 seconds here, that 400 will be ignored. It will take 10 seconds. So this is all configurable. It's not static.
Right, but I guess my point is that in an environment, the ops guys are going to customize those timeouts and retries and everything else to whatever they see fit based on performance of the live environment. It's not going to be dictated by what a developer thought of at creation time.
Yeah, that's fine. I think is the creation time is just to get started. So this value is kind of is going to be short-lived. Basically, it's just developers the initial guess, and then DevOps can go ahead to do anything they want.
Well, I think that's what I'm kind of saying as well, is that I don't think the developer should have any say in what those settings are in a live environment. And I think that's why this, whether it's a generator or whether it's purely the at timeout annotation from fault tolerance means this in terms of an Istio config, it's purely for developers to get going with Istio config locally. We shouldn't be pushing it as this is a leg up for ops to get started, because ops will probably have potentially mesh-wide timeouts on all services or retries or all that kind of stuff anyway. So to try and say that these are going to be initial values, to me, just doesn't seem to make sense.
So I think is okay for you. Probably doesn't make sense. However, is will make sense for some like DevOps. If
Really?
This is kind of
the developers.
Yeah, I heard is like this Istio config rules is handcrafted. Sometimes is difficult to write, and it's good to have a template for them to have a look. If they don't want to use it, that's fine. It's their
It might be
choice.
difficult for developers, but this is what ops guys do. They create config every single day.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's yeah. Go for it.
Aren't we talking here about DevOps? So it's both ops and developers. Isn't it the philosophy of microservices? So per each microservice, you have a team, and the people they are both developers and they are both ops people of each microservice.
Well, in the enterprise, that's not what I see, though. In unicorns, I see that more, but not in the enterprise.
Yeah, so maybe enterprise will move to that model of DevOps, small teams, microservices. So the people who develop, they maintain and support and operate their service.
Yeah, to be honest, from my experience with enterprises, I'm not sure that will ever happen, just because those who are typically developers in enterprises are often 9-to-5 developers that don't want to be called if production issues happen. It's a whole different set of people that are operators that are willing to have the rotational shifts to be able to do that kind of thing. But be that as it may, I think what we're trying to do here, from my perspective, should just be creating or even just documenting a guide of, if you have this config, this is what it looks like in a file. My concern with a generator is that it's potentially very easily getting out of date and is heavily tied to the version of Istio that you're wanting to deploy stuff to. So for me, having a generator is just one other thing that's going to get out of date very quickly. So I'd almost prefer some kind of document as to, if you have this configuration, this is what the Istio config for that looks like. And then that's much easier and only one thing to keep up to date, as opposed to co-generators and then issues of aligning with Istio versions and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I see it as something that we could leave in the sandbox, right? And maybe not try and tackle this specifically in the first version of the spec, right? And kind of, tackle other issues first and see what, see if it's worth moving forward on this. I just at least in the first version for sure, I just think it's being a little bit too aggressive.
So I think if we do it, that would be a kind of Maven plugin. If someone wants to use it, yeah, they can use it. So if not, yes, go ahead to write the files themselves. I think it's good to offer it. I think that's fine. Is we scope it. I mean, we have to try it out anyway to see whether it's feasible. I mean, from what you two has said, I think that we pretty much already got the good ecosystem. If you don't want to configure rules to be generated, directly disable MicroProfile fault tolerance, and just use the istio fault handling. So we already have
Even
that.
if you're generating the rules, you'd be turning MicroProfile fault tolerance off as well.
Yes. So basically, so here is what I'm thinking. So basically, so it's when you generate these rules, and then you can automatically turn off MicroProfile fault tolerance, and directly. And however, because fault tolerance, because the istio can only handle HTTP unsecured requests, can only intercept unsecured requests. It cannot deal with any secure request. For the secure request, you have to rely on the MicroProfile fault tolerance. So in this one, we can generate this, but not turning off MicroProfile fault tolerance. It's more like a get started.
By the way, where does this document exist?
Oh, this is Docker I wrote, and about MicroProfile and istio. I just draft it out, and we'll share with the service mesh.
Okay. Yeah, if you could put this in a Google Doc or something.
Yeah, I will. I think
Right.
this doc is Eclipse Foundation ask for some docs. I said, okay, I will produce a doc, and then I just draft it out. I can share with all of you on the GitHub, and then you can take a look about what I'm thinking as well. And any feedback is welcome. I think is while I'm writing this, I just think this a little bit more. I think it's good to think the full picture. So, okay.
I'm not sure I understand why there's a difference between the two.
Oh, why is it different? So HTTP requests is still Vadim know better. Vadim, do you want to explain?
Yeah, so for HTTPS, everything is encrypted. So Istio only can see just TCP traffic, opaque TCP and SNI. That's all that Istio can do. So Istio can perform some routing probably based on IPs, but it can see, headers, can see methods, nothing actually, paths. So it's just opaque TCP for Istio, HTTPS, plus SNI. I mean, opaque TCP, yes, opaque TCP or TLS with SNI, like any other TLS with SNI. So
Okay,
no HTTP information.
I'm just trying to, in this particular case, it's giving the impression that you want MicroProfile timeouts enabled when you're using HTTPS because Istio can't do that. But I would think that for a timeout, Istio can still do that, whether it's HTTPS or not.
For the
Because you're
timeout.
basically just timing out the request. You're not concerned with what's in the request.
So, but I think you are timing out HTTP request. You are not timing out TCP connection, or am I wrong? So you can have TCP connection open, but you can have no HTTP response. Could it be? So you have to understand, the HTTP request and response and HTTP, response codes and so on. So I'm not sure about the timeout.
So in the Istio doc is only talk about HTTP requests, HTTPs.
Right.
And,
I think currently TCP routing is not implemented at all. Well, let me check the documentation.
okay.
Yeah,
Thank you.
it looks like it's only HTTP2 gRPC, and yeah, I think that's it. And then TLS terminated HTTPS. Okay, I guess my thought right now is that, particularly for fault tolerance, that we're better off focusing on what's I think already been defined, the property to either turn off or turn off everything but fallback in fault tolerance. Because if we start getting into, oh, this annotation is disabled but this one's enabled, then that's just going to get extremely confusing, and you're potentially then going to you're going to create a situation where the people writing the Istio config need to be aware that if they do a particular thing, they need to set another piece of config somewhere else for an app to say disable it. And I just feel like that's going to be very complicated, just open us up to a whole bunch of problems.
What the one thing that a lot of Kubernetes deployers will do is polyglot deployments on the mesh, right? Whether it's Node, MicroProfile, traditional Java EE, whatever. So I kind of see Ken's point, right? In that if it's like, well, if if the application is MicroProfile, then set the setting, right? Otherwise, it's going to be ignored for everything else. Is that kind of the concern that you have, Ken?
Well, yeah, and if we go beyond just the whole everything but fallback is enabled or not, then it gets trickier in that if you've got, for instance, timeouts enabled in the app, but bulkheads disabled, but then if the ops guys decide to add some timeout configuration to Istio, then they need to be aware that they need to turn off the MicroProfile timeout for any container that might be MicroProfile. Otherwise, you're going to get double timeout problem.
So should it be the reverse then? Should it be, I'm a developer, I know I'm being deployed to a mesh within my organization, therefore the property that I set should be set within the application to disable all of fault tolerance except fallback?
Well, that's what we have right now, is that there is a property that says disable everything but fallback. But I think this document is kind of leading to want to be able to do that on a more fine-grade level. And I'm just not sure if that's really necessary. Because part of me is also mindful that I could see, obviously maybe a bit down the road, where we're in a situation where more or most Kubernetes deployments are using a mesh, and that when they're developing applications, they're not even using things like at timeout, at bulkhead, at retry, because they know they're running in a mesh, so they don't even need to create those annotations in their code. So I guess my view is I think the coarser-grained turn everything but fallback off is sufficient for right now, until we get some definitive feedback that something more is required, because I just feel like it might be a bit of overkill that isn't necessary.
So point of ignorance here. Sorry on my part. What does it mean to have fallback in the application? What triggers the fallback if something fails in the mesh?
You will get
the response code coming back.
Okay. All right.
So basically the current is as this docker saying, the current ecosystem is what the current spec offer is already have this property. Basically, the fallback is something complementary to to Istio for handling. I think it's I'm just trying to see since Istio cannot handle the secure request, I think it is more room. Hopefully, the MicroProfile can fit into that, can fill that gap. So that's why it's kind of trying to
But
look
is that
at
really
like
necessary?
yeah, I think it's necessary. If
But,
you have, if the Istio cannot handle it, and MicroProfile can, because that's real limitation for Istio.
but if in your services, if you're calling others other services, if you're in a mesh, you don't need to use HTTPS. You just have mutual TLS activated for the mesh.
But if you like, you have a, but if your endpoint is all is in the HTTPS, for example, Twitter and etc., and then you hard code it. I mean, when you create the backend, and then you directly use the HTTPS in the code in the client.
And
If you directly
Client
talk
wouldn't be in the
to
mesh.
you, in some situations you do not use the mutual the TLS. You directly use the HTTPS. I don't want, so Vadim, you want to say something?
Yeah, so I think sometimes you either have some legacy services in your mesh, or sometimes you may have some regulations that require that all the traffic has to be encrypted. So you have to issue HTTPS requests. Also, you have some libraries that are pre-configured to use HTTPS, and you cannot change them. It's another case where you have to use HTTPS, originated at the application.
Okay, but to me that kind of sounds like adding a feature into the spec to cater for a either legacy or rare occurrence that we're not even sure is going to be an issue right now. I think my concern right now is that we appear to be trying to over-engineer the MicroProfile integration with Istio Mesh, when really it should be extremely light or non-existent. Because we don't want to be in a situation where we've added stuff to MicroProfile because we thought it was the right thing to do, and then find that, well, actually Istio now offers those things that we were circumventing because Istio didn't. And we're now in a situation where we have this stuff that we can't deprecate without breaking backwards compatibility.
So which kind of things we cannot deprecate? So I cannot see, I mean, with this kind of tool and etc., I cannot see anything will impact the annotations in what, yeah, in any situations.
Well, I'm more talking about the handling like HTTPS and things like that. So we don't want to be stepping into areas that Istio is likely to deal with at some point.
No, that's a kind of, we just saying, okay, this kind of MicroProfile kind of complementary to Istio. If Istio in the future can do it, and yeah, that's fine. You just specify that property to turn off MicroProfile for tolerance is no problem. So in the meanwhile, I think I still see this kind of area, so we can come into play and to complementary to kind of cover that gap. So this is kind of in no way to affect MicroProfile fault tolerance, because we just say, okay, yeah, you can use the MicroProfile fault tolerance to do things. Yeah, I think it's a good thing. Having said that, I think the Istio is not going to fix or cover the HTTPS in the very short term. It's not. Don't think they are investigating to look at this.
So Ken, what is your experience with the enterprise customers? Are they okay with sending unencrypted requests and trusting Istio MTLS to do that for them?
Well, I know in some of the customers that we were talking to when Istio first came out, the ability to do mutual TLS was their biggest thing. And I think they considered that was the way that they were going to secure traffic between services. And then there's I think tied to that was the idea that anything external trying to get in has got a smaller footprint because everything's got to have ingress endpoints to be able to get accessed anyway. So there's going to be less footprint from that perspective. So I think from what I recall, a lot of the customers were perfectly happy with mutual TLS inside the mesh as a way to encrypt traffic.
Okay, so this is good news for Istio actually. Okay.
So it's good news. You trust Istio to secure the traffic. So I think is if something we can, something we can do it cheaply. I think it's good to do it. So also is I think is kind of promote a MicroProfile for tolerance, and then it does not affect anything MicroProfile for tolerance in any way. So I think yeah.
May I ask additional question using this opportunity?
Go for
yeah. So Ken, and regarding accessing external services from the mesh, are the customers okay again to perform HTTP and Istio will perform TLS origination for them when accessing, external services, web services, or legacy databases, for example, outside of the mesh?
I don't know because I haven't spoken to any customers that have that particular scenario in play. I don't know, John, if you have.
Can you repeat the question? I'm not sure I understood the question.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the question is, are the customers okay with issuing HTTP requests to external services outside of the mesh? And Istio will perform TLS origination for them.
I don't know the answer to that.
Okay.
I mean, there's a clear desire for customers to access services outside of the mesh. For, I don't want to call them legacy because they might be offended, for existing services. But yeah, whether or not it's going to be, I'm assuming it's going to be encrypted, but that's just an assumption, right? I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, so this is a good discussion. So I think we are just trying to find out, which areas MicroProfile can facilitate. I think we should keep our options open. Not or push customers towards Istio. If customer wish to do their own HTTPS, HTTPS request, they are free to use MicroProfile for tolerance. I think at least we tell them, actually, we are here to help you.
Well, I wasn't saying anything like that. I'm just saying in the context of, here we're specifically talking about in the context of Istio. Anything outside that isn't part of this discussion.
But it's also through the Istio, because one is inside Istio, the other one is outside Istio. We are not talking about everything is inside Istio. We should talk about ingress, egress, the things inside, and talk to something outside. And I think his current ecosystem, this will cover a lot of scenarios. I think, yeah, in my view, I think we can offer this kind of options if we can. So anyway, I will share my doc so you can take a look. I think is with all this kind of experience, etc., is quite a good exercise to look at them. So if like if you think the current ecosystem is already good enough, I think it's there's if it's good enough for the, I mean, if it's already good enough, we don't need to change anything though. So for, I mean, release this and etc., like a first draft and etc., we are pretty much there. So I think is we can spend some time and to look at how much we can do, and also gather some feedback and etc. Like I think it's better to uh, to put MicroProfile in a better situation and complementary to Istio, and also Istio will rely on something from MicroProfile for tolerance or MicroProfile other specs.
I don't think Istio would ever rely on anything from MicroProfile.
I'm hoping that Istio like will see, okay, MicroProfile can handle the HTTP S for tolerance.
I honestly, I don't think that
No.
would ever be the case, just because you're talking JVM and MicroProfile, and Istio is polyglot. They're never going to say, oh, it's covered by a MicroProfile, we're not going to worry about it. That's not going to happen.
Yeah, but at least we could say actually it's yeah, if you Java application, you are in Istio, you find out you want to use the HTTPS, MicroProfile can help.
Well, yeah,
And
that's different than saying
yeah.
Istio will rely on MicroProfile.
Yeah, Istio, okay. So I'm thinking if we kind of send this message and some other Java developer, Java customers go to Istio and said, how can you handle this? And Istio say, okay, looks like a MicroProfile have the answer.
No, they're not going to say that.
Okay, okay.
I really don't think that's not none of Istio's
No.
business or problem to worry about.
Need to make sure Vadim can advocate this.
Yeah, well, yeah, I think the way the Istio folks look at it is we're a platform abstraction, right? And we're there's too many runtimes out there that'll be running on top of Istio. So the whole idea of Istio is abstract away so that you don't have to worry about these concerns at the runtime level. So
Yeah.
as we're talking about here, that's not always entirely true. But yeah, I kind of agree with Ken here. I don't think they would ever say if this then that with whatever's running on top of it on a runtime by runtime basis.
Yeah, the question is probably which functionality is missing in Istio and what microservice can complement in Istio. I mean, if if MicroProfile, can cover any missing functionality in Istio. So the first missing functionality that we found is HTTPS fault tolerance. So, and this is the question, if MicroProfile plus Istio can somehow, provide more functionality or better functionality.
Well, yeah, there's certainly going to be those cases, and we should certainly document those. What I'm saying is that Istio is not ever going to have something that says on the Istio website, if you're using MicroProfile HTTPS, then your problem is solved, kind of thing.
Right.
Conversely, I would also say that because we've found that issue, we should probably push that up to Istio to say, hey, there's a gap here that if you're using HTTPS, then you can't set timeouts and all that kind of stuff, so that they can then look to come up with a polyglot way to solve the problem.
Yeah, but there is no simple solution for the problem. So you have the traffic is encrypted, and you have no simple way to decrypt it. One of the possible solutions is TLS interception. So Istio will have to handle the certificate, somehow, and the applications will have to trust Istio in that sense. So Istio will decrypt the traffic, will analyze the traffic and encrypt it again. It's not a simple solution. And also from the regulation point of view, it's not a simple solution. So in some enterprises, you will have regulation that will forbid such TLS interception.
I must admit, I don't know too much about HTTPS, but I would have assumed that you could get access to at least the headers to be able to say whether it was a successful request or anything like that.
No, you don't have. Everything is encrypted. This is the security issue.
Yeah, by the way,
yeah,
sorry to interrupt. By the way, Vadim works on Istio, so he did a lot work on the Istio.
Yes, yes. You know what? Let me paste the link to a discussion about TLS interception, and you will see there the opposition in Istio actually. Yeah, I will find it. There it is. Yes, and there is a design spec. Just a moment. This is the issue. Yes, and there is in a comment there is a design spec, I think. Can you scroll down? Yes. Here, design specification submitted for review. Yes. Here it is. So it's not clear when and if it will be implemented. There is a discussion currently. And again, I'm sure that there will be organizations that still will prohibit this behavior, even if it will be implemented in Istio.
Yeah, I think this is great. I think for this issue, we could, I will follow up. I said for this one, it's a MicroProfile for tolerance can help, at least for the Java applications. And then it's, yeah, with your help and your involvement in Istio, and hopefully they can mention actually for this one, we don't have a right answer if your Java application use MicroProfile for tolerance.
So yeah, this may be a situation where MicroProfile can certainly say that it can solve a problem that Istio can't or hasn't yet.
Yes.
But that's very different than getting Istio to point to MicroProfile to solve the problem.
For this problem, at least like in the question and answer, like okay, Istio cannot handle it. Is there alternative? So okay, for the Java application, I use MicroProfile for tolerance. So it's probably not like Istio directly promote MicroProfile. At least that is the kind of MicroProfile can get its foot into the Istio. This is a good opportunity. Thank you for sharing this.
I kind of have this meta observation. And the meta observation is this is the service mesh working group, and we're talking strictly Istio. Just an observation. I mean, if there's other service mesh, folks that would want to do something here, Linkerd or whatever. Not Linkerd. Is it Linkerd?
Yeah, Linkerd.
Yeah. So, but that's my only point here is, we're kind of defining a very Istio specific approach, trying to solve Istio. Now, everyone on this call is kind of, are contributing to Istio, right? Organizations are contributing to Istio. But I just thought I would just bring this up. In other words, as we discuss this, it looks like we're discussing things that are very specific to Istio. right?
Uh,
A meta observation, perhaps, but
yeah. So, John, is Vadim directly contributed to Istio? Vadim works on Istio. He doesn't work on MicroProfile. I just
no, but that's
yeah,
not my
just
point.
remark.
My point is there's other mesh technologies that aren't even.
Yeah. So for your second point, yes, when we first started this, we look at Istio, which is a very popular service mesh, but we are not limited to Istio. Our next goal and to look at LinkRD and to see whether whether we have goal now is works well with LinkRD and etc. So that's a big learning curve. At least for me to look at LinkRD as well. I don't know whether
But
can you,
sorry.
go for it, Vadim.
Yeah, so just a remark. So the HTTPS issue is the same for any other service mesh. It's a common problem.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. So I mean, from a Red Hat perspective, we're primarily interested in Istio, right? And so we don't really, if other folks want to investigate things besides Istio, that's okay. I just thought I would bring up this point as a general point. So I don't know how these things would affect necessarily other meshes. All right, I'm done.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah. So for us, I think we are looking at Istio. We haven't looked at some other stuff, but I think you are right because we define this as a service mesh. We at least spend some time to look at LinkedIn and etc. Not limited ourselves like a MicroProfile to only Istio. At least we think about that. Okay, I think we are pretty much we are done. That's a good discussion. So it's we should write better minutes. Let me see. Okay, that's cool. You get better minutes, and then we can continue discussion next week. And I will share my doc. Okay, great. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, bye.
Bye.